Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Today is date September 27, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a news podcast, which means we do try to be the best news station humanly possible by giving you the news from reputable sources, from award-winning journalism, not sensationalized news like Fox News and all those other places that aren't really news places. At the same time, we do try to watch our language, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, things that might be shown may be a little bit graphic for younger viewers. Some of your discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we start with this? Well, I think we need to start with some good news. And I keep saying this all the time when it comes to strikes and unions. When unions take strikes, things have happened, especially in the world of Hollywood with the Writers Guild, versus Hollywood.
Now to Hollywood, writers going back to work this morning after a vote by leadership to end their 148-day strike. We're learning new details about their deal with the studios and streamers. Kana Whitworth is in Los Angeles with those details. Good morning, Kana.
Hey, Robin, good morning to you. The Hollywood writers' strike is officially over. The nearly 150-day strike ending 1 minute after midnight, and the union securing some major wins here. Details of this deal have been sparse until now, but here's what we know so far. This 3-year deal outlines a 12.5% pay increase, starting with a 5% bump when the contract is ratified. One of the sticking points involved royalties, and the writers secured a 76% increase for their foreign streaming residuals, and they will also receive a viewership-based streaming bonus. And another big win for these members, studios and streamers will have to hire a minimum number of writers on projects. And the final issue, arguably the most important, revolved around artificial intelligence. The two sides established a set of guidelines regarding the use of AI. But you guys, of course, SAG-AFTRA still on strike. But a lot of people hope Hollywood is back up and running in some 6 to 8 weeks here, guys.
Heard me say it many times. Wall Street did
Quite you. So really, guys, from what you saw, yes, the Writers Guild did actually get a finalized ratification of the contract that they have with Hollywood. A lot of great things happen there. Pay increases, especially when it comes to streams and revenue and DVD services. Definitely a 12.5% pay increase, starting with 5% over the time of their contract. Guaranteed number of writers per shows and things of that nature, and AI is definitely being regulated. Again, all great things that are happening. Now, of course, that's only one other half of it. The Screen Actors Guild is still having their contract dispute with Hollywood, but with the Writers Guild kind of being solved, I would have to assume that SAG is not too far off from behind it. I don't know how many other ways I can say this, guys. I really don't. Unions work. They've always worked. They've always been able to get us. Benefits, PTO, sick pay, things of that nature, all born from unions. This is the reason why we strike, because if you guys haven't noticed by now, everything in the world is going up but your paycheck. And it's high time corporations are starting to realize that, because CEOs and those in the higher bracket percentile seem to have a disconnect with the rest of the world. Because again, I can only imagine if money is no longer an issue, you find yourself not in the same area. Ain't that right? But move right along, guys. I did want to cover this as well, because we've had this happen in Tennessee where drag shows are trying to be regulated, because some people believe that basically a person dressing up a drag is dangerous to your child, when it should be somebody who's backwards, illogical, and most likely a Republican in power. I'm talking about you, Lorraine Bobbitt, to decide to give your companion some extra needed attention at a Beetlejuice concert. We haven't forgot. Reason why I bring this up, guys, is that a judge in Texas has banned the law that says drag shows are unconstitutional. It is a violation of First Amendment rights since they're trying to declare that that drag shows are sexually oriented performances. They are far from it. So that way, a judge, which I thought was funny, a judge in Texas did see the buffoonery of this and sat there and said, no, it's unconstitutional. You cannot keep those performing when it's their freedom of speech, and it does not violate children. Keep in mind what I just said there, guys, because that's the conservatives' attack. The conservatives' attack is just that they are basically sexually expliciting in front of children. That is not the case, especially when you have places like Drag Queen Storytime Hour, which, again, when somebody who is actually wanting to make sure that your kids read does a better job of, say, you as a parent, but you get mad just because of the orientation, you feel like it's going to be indoctrination, it's freaking far from it. And I cannot stress enough that, again, I am glad that some places, even in Texas, I know in the Hold My Beer competition, Texas is actually, there's actually a judge in Texas actually showing common sense that's really unconstitutional. And of course, they're going to appeal it. We really shouldn't be surprised by that. But speaking of things that are surprising, guys, I hate to break it to you. We have to experience this again. I know, Obi. I know. We have to experience this again. What am I talking about? I am literally, guys, talking about the 6 things to watch for in the second 2024 GOP presidential debate. I cannot stress this enough that we have to go through this again. We have to go through this again. As if the first debate, which I basically called, by the way, the first debate was nothing more than a quote unquote shit show. And if you think that these potential ones, these 7 potential politicians going for the GOP nomination, if you don't think that the second presidential debate is not going to be the same, I can tell you, I could bet money on that. Because I'm going to tell you what they're going to talk about. They're going to talk about the economy. They're going to talk about Democrats overspending. And I guarantee somewhere along the lines, Trump is going to be somewhere involved. Because why? Trump is skipping the second debate. As he said before, he's leading in the polls. Why does he need to debate? Because he's leading in the polls. And I hate to break it to you, for a man who is facing multiple convictions and just had another ruling against him this week, he's not wrong that he is still leading. A man that has said nothing but has went on interviews, that has done rallies, is still popular than these 7 people. That's saying a lot. I mean, Governor Dictator Ron DeSantis, a man who fought Disney and lost. Vivek Ramsey, a man who may have swindled his way into college. Nikki Haley, not her real name, is basically somebody who's pretending to be a white woman. Mike Pence, America's scariest Christian. Chris Christie really is sitting on the fence. He's basically pulling a Mitt Romney. Tim Scott, a black man that thinks he can win a white man's party. Good luck with that. And of course, Doug Burnham, who's kind of like the older uncle that you invite to the cookout, but you make sure he's not alone left with kids. That is your group of people that will be debating. And all I can sit there and say is, it is going to be a shit show. Really and truly, it is going to be a shit show. And Trump is literally sitting there laughing his head off because nobody has stepped forward and really shown themselves to be the alternative in the GOP. So if you don't think that Trump somehow doesn't dodge everything that's coming at him, best believe that if he wanted to, as it stands, he could still win the nomination. Only in America can you be convicted. Could you be brought up on multiple charges in several different things, and yet you could still somehow, some way, still be president. Only in America. But moving right along, guys. Like I said, we talked about strikes for a second. General Motors. Again, I keep saying this, guys. Between General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, they are about to press the F around and find out button right now. Because what the UAW has done is basically stall. They call it stall striking, which means that they're actually having specific factories in which workers are leaving. And now, as you can see right there, that General Motors In response, this is the thing that kills me. General Motors idles another power plant, which means they're sending 2,000 workers home. So that's your response. That's the thing that kills me. That all they want, simply put, is simply better pay, a better idea of a work week, and things of that nature. And your answer, General Motors, is that, oh, well, we're just going to idle a manufacturing plant and lay off 2,000 people. And you think, see, that's a scare tactic, is what it is, guys. This is the thing I want to point out. This is a scare tactic that they feel like if they sit there and they hurt the people enough, that they're going to fold. Now, keep in mind, every strike that has happened this year has actually been effective for the worker. So again, the UAW is one of the biggest unions in the United States, over 140,000 union members. And like I said, at this point, the big three cannot afford to take plant hits in the U.S. Oh, but they could go to Canada, they can go to Mexico, and then who would buy their cars? Keep in mind, car prices are still astronomically high. Banks are not lending. Used cars have almost the value of a new car from 5 years ago. And trucks, nobody's going to pay $80,000 to $90,000 for a truck, even if it's not the premium high-end model. Nobody's going to spend 60, 70, and 70,000 and up for a vehicle that will depreciate as soon as you leave the lot. So if I was GM, if I was Ford, if I was Stellantis, I would get my head out of my ass before you wind up losing more than just a few workers. But again, how the frack we got here, we're all about union strong. So again, for those union people, stay strong, stay together, because eventually, as we've seen with other corporations, and including Hollywood, they will fold. Why? Because eventually they're going to realize they need you more than you need them. And also, shout out to again Tim Scott, who decided that he was going to take the Ronald Reagan approach. That when he was asked at a rally what he would do about the auto worker strike, and he sat there and said, to quote the GOP's white Jesus, Ronald Reagan, that if you strike, you're fired. And he believed in that. Well, unfortunately, Tim Scott forgot something, is that there's a certain section of a law that the United Auto Workers had already figured out that said he was engaging in unfair labor practices, which meant that, if we're speaking from a political standpoint, that anytime you sit there and you try to repeat something of that nature, well, you violate something basically, which is basically called interfering in the rights of the National Labor Relations Act. There we go. Wow, I can't talk. Which is basically in Section 7 of the Act, where it says the employer has interfered with, restrained, or coerced employees into the exercise of their rights guaranteed in that section. On Monday, September 8th, 2023, Tim Scott threatened employees with adverse consequences if they engage in protected, concerted activity by publicly responding to a question about striking workers as follows: if you strike, you're fired. Yeah, he violated it. And again, I'm not surprised about Tim Scott. I really am not, because the simple fact of the matter, guys, he is a effing idiot and delusional. Because again, he's a guy that thinks that he can win a political party that does nothing for minorities or women, but swears up and down he is the political poster child for pulling up by my bootstraps, being in a big family, making against all odds, and yet people are wondering about, is he single? Would that make him a good president? That's your political party, Tim Scott. And you just pissed off the UAW. Good freaking luck. But at the same time, guys, we do got to talk about the other elephant in the room. Unfortunately, if nothing gets done by this Saturday night, the government can be shut down again. Oh, play the repeat broken record.
Shut down 11:59 p.m. Eastern, Saturday night. That is the deadline to avoid a shutdown, and there is just no agreement yet about how to do just that, in large part because of divisions within the House GOP conference. The Speaker of the House trying to convince his members to all fall in line behind a Republican-only bill to keep the government open for just a few weeks. But he doesn't have the votes because he has included in this plan spending cuts that the Democrats won't accept, border security measures that the Democrats won't accept. But the cuts don't go far enough for some members on his far right, which means that he doesn't have the 218 votes to get this out of his chamber. He can only afford to lose 4 Republicans on any party line vote. He, at the moment, is probably losing about 7, maybe even up to 10 members on a short-term spending bill. So what is the Speaker's plan? He is still trying to pressure those same members to come on his side. This, as the Senate leadership, is working on a completely different plan to keep the government open with hardly any time to reconcile differences. Now, I asked the Speaker about what is looming over all this. Threats from his far right that he could lose his job as Speaker if he were to cut a deal with Democrats to keep the government open. I asked him how much that is driving his decision-making over his handling of the spending talks. How much is the fact that if you do cut a deal with Democrats, there could be a vote to push you out? How much is that driving your decision-making right now?
Nothing drives my decision. If that was driving my decision, wouldn't that driven my decision making 15 times before?
But you could have cut a deal with Democrats, and that could be the end of it.
Did I cut a deal then?
No,
Did I cut a deal then?
When?
When I went 15 rounds?
No, I'm talking about right now.
Okay, but let me explain something to you. I'm no different than I was then or before. My whole focus, what's in my mind, what drives me, is the American people. I'm not worried if someone makes a motion. I'm not worried if somebody votes no. I'm going to wake up each and every day with the same thing that drives my opinion of what needs to be done, solving these problems, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to work with people who want to get that done.
Now, even if the Senate were to reach a quick deal, it will still take some time for the chamber to process that measure. If it includes provisions dealing with aid to Ukraine, for instance, that could slow things down because of opponents such as Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who is warning he could drag things out. But there's talk of potentially foregoing the issue of Ukraine aid, punting that to later in the fall, and just simply keeping the government open just for a few more weeks. But there's still no guarantee that Speaker McCarthy will put a Senate-passed bill on the floor of the House. If he were to do that, again, he could face that same threat to push him out of the speakership. So huge questions looming over Washington. Will the government shut down? How long could a shutdown last? And how will this play politically? There are a lot of Republicans, including the Speaker himself, concerned that the GOP would get the blame for this as they try to get something done, avert a crisis here in Washington. But it's unclear at this moment whether they can.
Okay. Yes, we should be surprised. Number one, it's Kevin McCarthy, a man who does not believe that he doesn't have any issues, a man that sat there and was like, you know what? Sure, it took me 15 times, but hey, got in, right? It's the same guy who right now is having an issue with saving the economy, saving his presidential seat. Because his own party has sat there and said, either you put through what you promised you said you would do, or we vote you out as House Speaker. And even though it's a handful, and even though Kevin McCarthy right now may not have the complete and total votes to get things done, aside from that, it's always been a shutdown problem. See, what they do is they kick the can down the road. It's always been the problem. They'll just there and say, oh, it's a partisan issue. It's really not. Because if you've been following what conservatives want, they want to cut programs, which don't sound so bad, except they're the social programs. Oh, they want to cut the SNAP benefits. They want to cut food stamps. They want to cut Head Start. They want to cut all the things that American people are hanging on to right now because that's the only way they can make ends meet, keep food on the table, or keep a roof over their heads. At the same time, these Republicans, keep in mind, I said Republicans want to cut these programs. And I keep on, and the thing that kills me all the time is I wish Democrats would say that a lot more. I wish Democrats would turn around and they would say, you know what? It's not us. You want to know who's cutting? You want to know who's actually cutting these things? It's them. And I wish they would keep harping on it because you know what Republicans do? Republicans will harp on BS. At the same time, will turn around and sit there and say, oh, well, they keep repeating the same lie over and over again. Democrats can do the same thing, but with the truth. Conservatives want to cut spending programs. If they keep harping that enough, people will pay attention. But saying it every once in a while doesn't get anywhere. But you know who to get though? The people that actually get it. Because people forget the things that happen in a government shutdown don't always affect politicians because politicians still get paid.
If the government shuts down. Let's bring in ABC's Alexis Christoforous to help explain the impact across the country. Alexis, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. A government shutdown would disrupt many of the essential services that Americans rely on and force as many as 4 million federal employees to lose pay. Government workers deemed essential, such as military and law enforcement, would have to work without pay, though they would get back pay once the shutdown was over. National parks could shut down unless their states pay to keep them open, and some passport offices and federal buildings could also close. A shutdown would delay new clinical trials for cancer and other research, while 10,000 children could lose access to the early child development program Head Start. Contractors, including janitors and security guards, would be at risk of losing their jobs. But not all services will be halted. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid payments will continue. The Postal Service function. Many IRS offices, though, will be closed, but Americans will still have to pay their taxes. And travelers may feel the pain at the nation's airports as air traffic controllers would have to work without pay, and training for thousands of new air traffic controllers meant to ease the current shortage we all have would stop. Americans hoping history doesn't repeat itself. The last time the government shut down in 2018, federal workers began showing up at food banks, and many essential workers began to call in sick. Gio?
And we shouldn't be surprised because the same
countdown to a possible government.
Sorry, guys. The same thing happened before. We should not be surprised because, again, these are the programs that shut down. Yes, Medicare and Social Security would still continue, but like the other things that people depend on, Head Start, food, SNAP benefits, food stamps, those things get halted. Government workers, that's a big thing. There are so many government workers out there that when a shutdown happens, they don't get paid. At the same time, I always tell politicians, because you know what it comes down to? Politicians will always, above all else, get paid. Yes, politicians will always get paid whether the government is running or shut down. But people like this young woman, people like this one right here, have to face another truth.
Government shutdown impact you?
Well, it would impact me and a lot of other folks the same way. We're contractors for the government, and when the government shuts down, we don't have, backup sources. Where when the government shuts down, the company doesn't pay us for being off, and then they don't want us to use it said like I got a little late vacation. They don't even want us to use that, so we don't have anything. And then like the last government shutdown, we all applied for unemployment, but by the time we applied for the unemployment, we were back at work. And so we never got the unemployment. So we had to go without, So it impacts a lot of us. Mm-hmm. And anybody that works in the food service industry or cleaning contractors that work for small companies.
If the government shuts down, do you get a paycheck?
No, we don't get a paycheck. And then when they bring the government back, say like they bring everybody back after the federal workers, they get their money. We get nothing. We're just out.
No back pay.
No back pay, nothing. There's no source of income to come in. And bill collectors and everybody, because the government shut down, they don't care. They just want their money. They don't care what source that you get it from. And right now, I don't have a backup source that we shut down.
Are you frustrated with lawmakers?
Yes. Because they don't care about us. When I say us, it's myself as a food service worker, a person that cleans, everybody that's a contractor for the government. We all suffer from whatever the decisions that everybody else makes.
Do you worry that you won't be able to pay your bills by the end of the month if Congress doesn't act?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I worry about that. A whole lot. I'm trying to cry. I'm trying not to cry. But yes, I worry about all that. Not only for myself, but others just like me. The government will go back and they're going to get paid. We're not going to get anything. We got to try to scrape by, and you got to listen to the phone calls come because you haven't paid your bill. You haven't did anything. And I've been there and I've done that. I've been up on this hill for 42 years. I've been there. Oh.
You're tired of it.
Yeah. They need to think about us. Us, as I say, all the workers that's out here in this world that's just like me.
And I feel for her. I do. I feel for her just because that is the reality for most government workers. That is the reality that you have politicians out there who have no problem playing Russian roulette. And again, I have to point to the conservatives. Democrats want to move forward. Democrats want to move forward with a spending bill. The conservatives want cuts. They always want cuts. Because the thing about Republicans is, and I have yet to have anybody disagree with me when I say this. Republicans are the biggest spenders out of them all. But they swear up and down have this short-term memory loss. Like, how do we incur such debt? How do we do all this? You guys did it. You guys did it. Not only did you guys do it, but you're trying to blame the Democrats because for all the spending that you did, we had to spend ourselves out of it to restart things. But it's kind of funny now because for almost 3 years in this podcast, I have sat there and said, the one thing about the GOP is that they always hold the line. Not anymore, because now you have a group of conservatives looking at Kevin McCarthy and saying, give us our demands or we will let the government shut down. And I've always said this once and I'll say it again. It amazes me so that politicians still get paid whether they do a good job or a bad job. But government workers don't get spit if the government shuts down, and they don't get back pay if the government starts back up. And there is something very, very, very wrong about that when it comes to two political parties, one that would rather see chaos and would outwork the other. Here's why I say bipartisan. The word bipartisan alone is bullshit. It really, truly is. And something that for a lot of you people really should keep in mind, because once we get past the presidential election of 2024, midterms are right around the corner again. Again, I keep saying this, guys, about getting involved, getting informed, not just at the federal level, but the local level too. Because I can tell you right now, in my home state of Tennessee, it's just as much effed up stuff there as it is in any other state, and not because it's the South. But speaking of Democrats, because they got their own hot water, but again, Bob Menendez, a man who is adamant that he did nothing wrong, even though they found he's accused of bribery charges, which, again, thousands of dollars found in his coat, gold bars in his house, and yet him and his wife have now just pled not guilty.
His wife have pleaded not guilty to federal corruption charges in a New York courtroom. The New Jersey Democrat is defying calls to resign after being accused of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes. Our senior investigative reporter, Aaron Katursky, joins me from outside that courthouse now with more on this. Aaron, walk us through what happened in court.
It was a very brief hearing. Senator Menendez pushed his way inside the courthouse through a throng of cameras, made his way upstairs to the 26th floor, where his attorney, Seth Farber, entered a plea of not guilty on the senator's behalf, telling the magistrate judge, we ask you to enter a plea of not guilty. Otherwise, Menendez didn't say much during the entire hearing, and he was released on a $100,000 bond. A couple of seats over sat his wife, Nadine. She also entered a plea of not guilty through her attorney and was released on a $250,000 bond. His co-defendants, two businessmen, sat behind the senator. They were each released on bonds of $1 million and $2 million, respectively. And so now, Diane, the process of beginning to defend themselves against these federal corruption charges begins.
So, Aaron, where does this case go from here?
The senator is due next in court on October 2nd, and that's really just the beginning of what could be a very long prosecution. Today, he formalized what he's been saying in public remarks and in fiery statements issued after the indictment dropped, where he formally pleaded not guilty, but he says he's innocent and he's going to be proven innocent in court. And he explained away the wads of cash that prosecutors say they found stuffed inside his embroidered congressional jacket and in other places in his New Jersey home. He said he just takes out money from his savings account because he has lingering paranoia as a Cuban immigrant's son of the government possibly confiscating his money. He says that may sound strange and old-fashioned, but that's his explanation for why the wads of cash were in his house. He has not yet explained why prosecutors allegedly found 3 gold bars and other items, the result, they say, of the bribery offenses.
I mean, I've heard of some reaching.
We're going to turn now to Senator Bob.
Sorry. I've heard of some reaching excuses in my time. Wow. Just wow. Yeah, that's not going to work the way you intended to work. You can sit there and explain. I mean, the cash, that goes into ageism all over again. Oh, I was always worried the government's going to come for my money. So you decide to take it out of the bank and stuff it in your jacket. It's a reach. It's a reach. But explain the gold bars, the jewelry that you had gotten from where again? See, that's the thing about it. You won't be able to explain it. And at the same time, I'm just saying there's certain things out there that are just not adding up. But Democrats are calling for him to resign, even though he is still presumed innocent until proven guilty. But again, you kind of have to explain where all this came from. You did definitely get on a government salary. That's all I'm saying. But we'll follow that story as it comes along. Also, Trump is back in the news for committing fraud. Who would have guessed that one?
New legal blow tonight for former President Trump in New York State's $250 million civil lawsuit over alleged business fraud. Garrett Haake joins us. Garrett, the judge making some highly critical comments in this case.
Yeah, that's right, Lester. The judge ruling the former president committed repeated acts of fraud in building up his real estate empire. And in a scathing ruling, the judge found Mr. Trump repeatedly lied to both banks and insurers about the value of his properties and exaggerated his wealth by billions of dollars to get more favorable loan terms or insurance rates. The judge writing Mr. Trump's financial statements were, quote, based in a fantasy world, not the real world, and said any remaining legal issues will be resolved at the trial beginning on Monday. Mr. Trump calling the lawsuit a politically motivated witch hunt by a Democratic attorney general, and Trump's lawyer saying they'll appeal. Lester?
All right, Garrett Haake, thanks.
Sorry about that. I am definitely not on my line about switching things over. Again, Trump, fraud. Why are we surprised? That he's basically repeated acts of frauds for years? The rest of the world. Duh. Again, I keep saying this. If Trump somehow, some way gets through this, I will be freaking surprised. And I do mean surprised. But again, we shall see, because we're not too far off from the next year of the presidential nominations. And if Trump somehow managed to stay out of jail, he may get the nomination. And that's a scary part. And we had even got the second debate. It's supposed to be happening very soon. But I digress. Move right along. Guys, this is another thing, especially for Black, I keep on pointing this out. They are trying to get us at every turn. What I mean by that is, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, that there is a fund out there, the Fearless Fund, which is basically a fund out there that grants that does grant funding for Black women who are entrepreneurs. There is a gentleman out there, and I wish I could make this up. This gentleman, Edward Bloom, who is behind the admission cases on the Supreme Court, who is literally the guy for the American Alliance for Equal Rights. He says that the Fearless Fund, because it's a grant that is specifically for Black women, isn't fair. Yes, you heard me right when I said this. The Fearless Fund, which is for Black women entrepreneurs, and that Edward Bloom, a man, a white man at that, has tried to sit there and say that the Fearless Fund is basically unfair because it's targeted toward a certain demographic. Well, thankfully, a judge had saw reason and sat there and pretty much told him in so many words, they can do that, you're an idiot, and leave. Well, this is the reason I keep bringing up. That's just one of many stories. I mean, there's a story out there right now about land that's trying to be seized by a state for eminent domain to which Black people have owned for decades. I keep saying this, guys, all the freaking time, that they are pretty much putting out things out there they're trying to take from us, and they're doing it right in front of our faces. This is why I keep saying the whole entire time, guys, it is time to be active. It is time to get into it, because if we do not, it will come back to haunt us. I promise you that. I can't keep stressing that anymore, that it will come back to haunt us unless we act. But the last story I got, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment is, well, I never thought I'd see this coming in 2023, but I guess I got to add this to my bingo card. The Senate just passed a bill that possibly could push forward marijuana.
A bipartisan bill related to marijuana has cleared a major hurdle in the U.S. Senate. The SAFER Act would make it easier for marijuana businesses to access the financial system. This was advanced by the Senate Banking Committee today, meaning it heads to the full Senate floor for a vote next. According to Statista, the U.S. cannabis industry is set to pass $33 billion this year. And the thing is, those companies need somewhere to store their money, right? Unfortunately, that is almost impossible present day, because for those businesses, marijuana is illegal under federal law, and so they can't save their money in federally insured banks. The legal marijuana industry is almost entirely cash-based because of those restrictions. CNBC's Jane Wells joins me now. So, Jane, this bill is not going to legalize marijuana at the federal level, just to be clear, but it deals with this banking issue.
It's a huge step forward, Kate, because this banking law, if it becomes law, will allow the federally regulated banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, to do business, to accept the money from these state legal marijuana operations. These businesses can also get loans now. They can buy insurance. They can get financing. Their employees will be able to show proof of income and get mortgages. And it will also then maybe let Visa and MasterCard into these legal dispensaries so that customers can start using credit cards and move away from there's just so much cash, which creates danger. And there are often robberies at these dispensaries. This is all part of making it safer, not legal federally, but safer.
And what are the mechanics on Capitol Hill, Jane? If this passes in the Senate, I don't know if that's likely, then what happens in the House?
Well, Senator Chuck Schumer says he plans to bring it to the floor as soon as possible. And the theory is they wouldn't have got it out of the committee, which was a bipartisan vote, by the way, unless they felt they had the votes on the floor. They are going to need 60 votes to end debate before then they can do a vote in the Senate. After that, it would go back to the House, which has passed this many times. The choke point has always been the Senate, and then it'll go to the president's desk. That's assuming there's not a government shutdown.
Well, we just talked about that. Yes.
So, yes. So, of course, the bill itself doesn't legalize marijuana, although at this point, I have to keep asking this question, why the frack not? But at the same time, it is geared to those, because if you guys haven't noticed, those who are in the marijuana business do not have bank accounts because banks do not recognize them as sustainable financial holdings. So therefore, marijuana stores and coffee shops, they're called, don't have bank accounts. So they are always up for being robbed and things of that nature. Look, here's my thing. One day, I hope in my lifetime, because I don't smoke weed. I have plenty of friends out there that enjoy it. It's medicinal. It has, and I have saying this. I've been saying this for now 3 years. I'm not a fan of marijuana. I don't smoke it. I don't ingest it, but I do understand the properties behind it that have been helpful, that have been beneficial, that are better than oxycodone and Percocet pills, that have helped many upon many of people. I understand it. I see, and of course, not just from the relaxation measures up for it. I mean, the plant alone has many other applications that could be used to really give ourselves a brand new economy and pump money back into the U.S. I see all of that. The problem is we have to admit that the day we legalize marijuana in all 50 states, that we also have to admit that the war on drugs is really bullshit and that Ronald Reagan conned us all. Maybe one day when we have a progressive enough government, that'll actually happen. But there are still some states where you can enjoy it. So visit and enjoy yourself. But guys, we're gonna go ahead and get on to our feel good segment. Usually when have the Frack guy here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes we faith in humanity, but hey, it's Hump Day, which is Wednesday. Tomorrow is Friday Eve, which is Thursday. We will leave you guys out with some good vibrations. And who doesn't enjoy a good birthday? Even when you're the oldest person in the U.S. and you look good for your age too.
America strong. It's been said aging is just another word for living. Elizabeth Francis is doing both gracefully.
Oh, I'm very, very young. Look at me.
Elizabeth Francis is now 114 years young. As she celebrates this birthday, she's also counting her blessings as the oldest living Texan and the second oldest person in all the U.S.
Happy birthday,
joining Miss Elizabeth, as she likes to be called, great-great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren, grandchildren, and her only child who's in her 90s.
I am 94 years old. I'm trying to forget.
At 114, Miss Elizabeth qualifies as a super centenarian, a term reserved for those 110 and over. When she was born in Louisiana back in 1909, William Taft was president. At that time, blacks and women did not yet have the right to vote. Her family credits her longevity to her faith. Miss Elizabeth made sure to attend church every week and read the Bible daily. Now church members bring the service to her. Her granddaughter also points to her healthy living habits. She never drove a car, walked everywhere. As for smoking,
never have.
Or drinking,
oh, no, ma'am. She has been a wonderful mother and grandmother to all of us. She has been our back.
Well, definitely happy birthday. 114 and still looks good for her age, man. Hey, to be 100 years old, that is a wealth of knowledge and life in there. Like I said, want to give Miss Francis all the happy birthday and love on that one. But that's gonna do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. So shameless plug before I do get out of here, guys. I do want to shout out my buddy Vaughn at Big VZA on all social media. He's the guy that comes up with the beats and things of that nature, has his own YouTube channel. So if you're interested or need beats for whether it's a show, whether it's an intro like my show or things of that nature, definitely check him out, Big VZA on all social media. Outside of myself, guys, you can find me, BlackBox447 on all socials. I usually do reviews on everything, even gym stuff, because I'm trying to get myself into a shape. Also, the banner that you see at the bottom, I mean, make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, take it to my link tree that has the YouTube, Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, of course, off my podcast. Definitely check them out. Like, share, and subscribe. And for everything that we talked about tonight, guys, I still want to keep the conversation going. The only rule I have is keep it clean and let's keep it about the facts. And yes, you can agree to disagree, and the world won't end. It's as simple as that. Aside from that, guys, I keep saying this as we get into as we're getting toward the end, even with this debate that's about to happen, guys, get informed, get involved, vote. I cannot stress this enough, because if voting wasn't, if anything, the last special election in Georgia should have shown you how crucial voting truly is. Without that, we would not have our first black senator out of Georgia. Georgia itself wouldn't turn blue. And at the same time, there might have been a chance that Trump could have actually gotten to be president again. And actually, at this point, if he stays out of jail in 2024, he also might be president again. The point I'm getting at this, guys, is get informed, know the candidates that you're voting for. If you don't like the candidates, there are plenty of sites out there that can help you figure out how you can run in your own home state. And like I said, it's not always federal. Get local. Get from the ground up. Change your neighborhood and change the world. I know that sounds corny, but it's still true. Nothing cannot work without you. And if you work as a group, all the things you can accomplish. But the last thing I'll say about how the Frack Got Here, guys, is all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information to allow you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as a society once we're informed. we actually do the things that we should have done when we had the chance, like elect our first black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman for the Board of Governors, electing our first black woman to be a national cybersecurity director. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll all get through this. Peace.